Okay, everybody, we do not seem to have a working camera in the chamber, so hopefully Michael is now recording our sound and all the amazing things we say, and hopefully our guests on the big screen can hear us and interact with us later. Good evening and welcome. This is the third Audit and Governance meeting of this civic year. I'm Councillor Josh Williams, member for Park Ward and Chair. I've got a bunch of announcements from the chair first. Am I going to do the webcast notice, really, without a camera? Okay, please note this meeting is filmed for live and subsequent broadcast via the council's website. You should be aware the council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a webcast will be retained in accordance with the council's published policy, if it's recording anything. We have apologies this evening from Councillor Mitchell, who has other commitments, and he's requested Councillor Robinson take his place this evening, which he's very welcome to do. Good evening. We don't have the facility for substitutes in the standing orders, so in the unlikely event of a vote on anything this evening, Councillor Robinson will not be casting a vote, but in all other matters we look forward to his input. We are now operating under new terms of reference as a committee. Do we all feel different? Yeah. Those terms of reference include the requirement for us to look at the governance arrangements of partner organisations. Those might include Reading Buses, GLL, Brighter Futures for Children and a number of others. Officers hope to have the resource to report to this committee on the governance arrangements of one partnership at a time, possibly starting with our July meeting next civic year. So members, do we have any thoughts on which significant partnership we would like officers to start with? Which one would we like to address first? Does anyone have any thoughts? No, not a problem. I think we should attempt, if we can, to start with the most significant of the partnerships in terms of finance, budget, and probably impact as well. So my suggestion would be to start looking at the governance arrangements of Brighter Futures first. And then following that, following the officer's report, we can move on to a different partnership organisation. Does anyone agree or object or have any other one they would like to suggest? I've got some nods. Okay, we're happy with that. Should we just minute that's the request of the committee to officers? If and when they're able to bring us that report, we'd like to look at Brighter Futures first. Thank you very much. We also have, under the new SIPFA guidance, which details that it's best practice for an audit committee to produce an annual report. And as part of this, we are supposed to assess our own performance. In light of that, our internal audit team have drafted up a short questionnaire which they're going to ask each committee member to complete, and they'll be emailing those round this week. Actually, I'll look at Paul. This week, next week, I meant to say next week, and they would like us to complete that. It's only a short questionnaire within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Will that be okay for members? Does anyone have a problem with doing a quick quiz in the next 2 to 3 weeks? No, brilliant. Take that as a firm commitment from everybody. Thank you very much. That will enable our internal audit team to put together an annual report for us. And now we're on to the main agenda. Declarations of interest. Are there any this evening? No, we can move on. Thank you very much. The minutes of the September meeting. Just one thing to note from me. We requested the Director of Finance and Chief Accountant to circulate a briefing note on audit differences that were reported in the audit results report, which we haven't had yet. Could I look over it, Darren? Will that be coming soon?
Well, that depends on the feedback we get from EY, but as soon as we've got the final report, we will do a briefing to share the details with the members of the committee.
Perfect, thank you very much. There you go. Oh, thanks. Members, any comments or thoughts on the minutes, or are you happy to agree those as a record? Nods around. Thank you very much. We're happy to sign those minutes. Item 3 is questions from members of the public. We don't have any tabled this evening. So item 4 is our closing financial accounts update. There's no Mark. I'm looking to Darren. Darren, would you like to say a few words to introduce?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, Mark is unwell, so he can't be here tonight. So this is the usual report updating members of the committee on the close down of the accounts process. I'll leave EY to cover the latest position on the progress on the 2021 audits. The information in here was written a few weeks ago, so EY can update you on the current position when they do their update. With regard to subsequent years' accounts, though, we published the draft 21-22 accounts at the end of November, and the public inspection period for those accounts has now concluded on the 10th of January this year. We are now on track to produce the draft 2022-23 accounts within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm anticipating. So they should be published during February, and then we will commence the public inspection period in February for those accounts. So this is really good news. We're actually getting up to track on publishing the accounts. We've put a short update in the report about the transition to our new auditors, KPMG. They've already given us a list of things that they want to start looking at in Reading, and we are responding back to them this week and agreeing dates for when they can start to do work with us on the 2023-24 financial accounts period. We've also provided an update on the national position. You can see in the table on section 6.2 of the report of the current backlog position in terms of accounts nationally. What we didn't say in this report, because we hadn't received it at the point of submitting the report, is that we've now had a letter from the Minister for Local Government. That minister was dated the 9th. That letter was dated the 9th of January 2024, and in there they've confirmed an intention to introduce a backstop date for the conclusion of outstanding local audits. So that would cover all of the years up to 2022-23. And that proposed backstop date is the 30th of September this year. So essentially what that will mean is that if audits aren't concluded by the end of September, then I anticipate that the auditors will be required to issue disclaimer opinions to say that they were unable to complete the audit within that deadline, and that will effectively bring an end to the audit of those accounts, and we then move on to 2023-24. I'm sure if Maria disagrees with my interpretation of the letter, then she'll say so in her update. So essentially that's it from us in terms of the update. The key info I think comes from EY in their update that they're about to give.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions, but do members have any comments or thoughts or questions for officers? Oh yes, Councillor McGoldrick.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just really to thank Darren and his team. I understand that historically auditing has been a bit of a painful subject and experience, and I think it's actually a real testament to officers and also to people on this committee as well that we have gotten to such a good place on it, and that's obviously really positive, and particularly in light of the very difficult national picture that lots of councils are facing. I think Reading is an outlier in a good respect, and that is something that hopefully everyone in this committee can welcome.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of, forgive me for some boring questions. That's what we're here for. The 21-22 draft accounts were published for a public consultation. Was there any response from any member of the public on those accounts?
Well, there wasn't during the consultation period, but we have then had something subsequently come through that indicates that somebody tried to submit something to us during the consultation period, but which we never received. We're following up on that query now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm glad I asked. Okay. My second question is, in our September meeting, if I've got that right, we received a going concern briefing on the 2021 accounts, which we're going to hear when they will be signed off. But let's say it's in a month's time.
Yeah.
That going concern briefing could potentially be 6 months old. Does it still hold true, or do we require another briefing?
I'm assuming we will be required to update the going concern briefing for KPMG, but Stuart will have more information on that than me.
So we are required to update the going concern briefing to EY, which we've done. It isn't substantially different to the one that was presented to Audit and Governance Committee for 2021. Happy to circulate by email if that would be acceptable.
I mean, if we're not looking at anything substantially different, and if I'm providing signature as chair, would members like me to receive that going concern update alone in order to sign off for the committee, or would members all like to receive that? As we've heard, it won't be substantially different. I think I'll take that as chair because it's my signature going on, if that's okay, and that'll keep things a bit simpler. And yeah, okay, we don't need to clog up members' time too much. So my last question, sorry about this. Darren, you mentioned that there's the potential for an audit to effectively be stopped and a determination issued that couldn't be completed. How do we know what we don't know about that audit? All of the work that would have been done may have thrown up things that would then be reflected in the following year's accounts. How do we deal with that missing knowledge and information?
That's a particularly good question. It's a question that I've got myself, because the audit of the accounts isn't just giving you assurance as a committee that the accounts are right, it's giving me assurance as the 151 officer that the accounts are right as well. So my preference is to conclude as much of the audit work for the 2 outstanding years as possible by the 30th of September in order to give us the maximum level of assurance that we can have at that deadline date.
Is it fair to assume that if that does occur, that we'll receive an update report to this committee, giving officers opinions on how far through we were?
You absolutely will receive an update report to the committee about that.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody. Members, are we happy to note the report and the progress made with our thanks to officers? Yeah, nods all round. Thank you very much to Darren and all of his team. And now we can move. Oh, hopefully, if the technology is serving us, we shall now move to our external auditor update. And we've got a verbal update this evening, no report for us to read. I think, can I see Adrian and Maria's name on our big screen? I guess you guys cannot see us, but I'm hoping that you can hear us.
We can indeed. Can you hear us, Chairman?
We can, loud and clear. Thank you.
Excellent. So if you're happy for me to go ahead.
Please do. Yes, over to you.
Thank you. So a couple of things I just wanted to pick up. So and I will ask Adrian to then give a little bit more detail. So with regards to the 2021 financial statements, you'll remember that we brought the audit results report to your last meeting, and we went through everything that we'd found to that point and noted the action earlier that when that report is finalised, you'll have a second report from officers explaining any differences within there. I'm pleased to say that since that meeting, and as you'll have seen in the report from officers in the table 1 in that report, that a number of queries were responded to. We had reviewed and accepted 246 of those as at the 8th of January, and there were 130 that had come through to us that we were working through. As part of that working through, there will be obviously queries back, because when we receive information, usually, you know, a lot of it is now really good and we can follow it through. Sometimes it doesn't quite tally to what to the question we asked. So there's usually some further queries back, but really pleasing to see that response. From the point of view of the 2021 financial statements, then a couple of outstanding bits that were from people external to the council. So we had the group auditor reports that we've been chasing really hard over the last number of weeks. I think Adrian's been chasing them for months, but we did get the group auditor information through, so that's really good. The one thing we haven't had through yet is from the pension fund auditor. We haven't had the information there, but I know, again, Adrian's had correspondence with them today. Has been chasing regularly, so I think Adrian can update us on that in a moment. So that's the 2021. I will just pick up the point about 21, 22 and 22, 23. So the proposed backstop dates, if we are to get to the stage where we can tie off the 21, 22 and 22, 23 audits by that backstop date, in order to disclaim those audits, it's going to take a certain amount of work to get to that position. And exactly to your question, Chairman, and also the response, we are still working, and the technical groups and at the centre people are working to try and understand what do we need to do as a minimum to be able to disclaim those accounts to move things on, so that you can pick up your 23-24 accounts with KPMG, but also what are the ramifications of that on opening balances and the balances within your financial statement. So there's a lot of work going on there, but primarily what we really need is for the consultations to come out at the end of January, early February, for the legislation to be laid by the end of June. And if that happens, we will just about have enough time to get to work through what is required for the disclaimers on those two financial years. We certainly won't. I mean, if you think about the amount of work and effort that's gone in to get the 2021 accounts through, we certainly won't have enough time to complete the audits of 21, 22 and 22, 23 in that time. What we are focusing on is completing any historic audits that are mostly there. So, for example, your 2021 audit, we're focusing on completing the value for money reporting up until the 31st of March 23, because under the NAO code, the value for money reporting is not something that can be disclaimed, and so we know it needs to happen for you to be able to move over to KPMG and crack on with your 23-24. So those two aspects of the work that we do with you, we are focused on. And so hopefully that gives you a flavour as to where we are. But Adrian, would you like to give a little bit more detail on 2021 and what's outstanding, and then we'll stop for questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, or thanks, Maria, sorry. So tonight, in terms of the 2021 audit, we are, as Maria said, we're substantially complete. So all of our audit fieldwork and testing is complete, and essentially we're now working through residual queries that have come out from the testing that we've done, and we're liaising with the finance team on a daily basis to kind of close those down as quickly as possible. So we're hopeful that by the end of this week, very early next week, we should have substantially completed the residual queries on the single entity council accounts. And then next week, we would be working through the consolidation adjustments, just to make sure that all of the adjustments which have been agreed as part of the single entity account flow correctly into the group accounts. In terms of the one outstanding matter that Maria has referred to from the pension fund, so because Reading Borough Council is an admitted member of the pension fund at Royal Borough Windsor and Maidenhead, we actually don't audit the pension fund. So in order for us to take the assurance and to minimise the amount of work that would need to be done, we then place reliance on the work that's done by the pension fund auditor. And as part of that process, there's kind of a well-agreed principle where we write to them in terms of our materiality thresholds, and they then complete a period of work and a programme of work which would then give us the assurance that we need over the pension fund. There's currently one outstanding matter on for us to receive before we can receive the letter. And as Maria said, I've been chasing up with the pension fund today at Royal Borough Windsor Maidenhead just to clarify the position. So we're kind of working with them to try and get to a point where actually the audit of the pension fund can then issue their letter, and then that means that we can then move towards completion of the 2021 audit. In terms of other areas that are outstanding, we currently have the value for money conclusion. That should be finished this week. So essentially the work is substantially complete and we're just moving through to final review of that. In terms of the likely outcome, we're currently looking at potentially an adverse opinion on around the children's services and also just around the control environment, which is consistent with the prior periods. What that would then mean is, as we move into the next few weeks, is in terms of resolution, is we'd update the audit results report. So we'd circulate that through to both the committee and also to the chair. And we then have a specific meeting with the chair and Darren as Director of Finance to talk through the specifics and also the changes that have occurred between the report that we last presented in September and also the report that we'll be presenting through over the next week or 2 weeks or so. And also what that'll mean is also we can then explain through to the chair who signs on behalf of the audit committee and also to Darren any of the key changes and any impact that may have on our audit opinion. We're pleased to say at the moment that we're currently looking at an unqualified audit opinion, which is obviously very positive from the point of view of the council and reflects kind of the hard work that's gone in over the large number of months since we started commencing the audit. So hopefully, as I say, the next few weeks should bring us to a conclusion for 2021 and subject to kind of final review, we would be moving then towards that unqualified opinion. And as I say, we'd set up a meeting separately with Councillor Williams and also Darren as Director of Finance just to talk through those key changes before we receive kind of the final signed accounts and the final signed letter of rep, which would then bring to a conclusion the 2021 audit. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. A quick question from me then. Are we, if we could just clarify a little bit, are we looking for completion and sign off probably at some point in February for 2021? Yes,
yeah, that's exactly the plan, and we're going to keep pushing on the pension fund to get the insurances there. I think the latest you'd had, Adrian, is that the person who needs to sign out the letter is on leave till early February, but we are going to see if someone else at the firm can sign that out for us, because personally I'd really like to push this through in the coming couple of weeks. But yes, I think February is sensible, Chairman.
Perfect, thank you. Could I just throw over to Darren?
Yes, so Adrian and Maria won't know this, but I've written to RBWM this afternoon saying I'm not prepared to wait until that officer's back on the 7th of February. We've already waited 2 weeks. I'm not waiting another 2 weeks before they get the information to us.
Perfect.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And one other thing from me, Maria, there sounded like an awful lot of things that needed to happen on the way through to the 21-22 and the 22-23 being sort of signed off without being completed. We probably, with our civic year, have a meeting in July. Is that an appropriate time for committee to be updated on progress?
Yes, I think it is, because I think the government are hoping to get the legislation through by the end of June, and in order the backstop date of September to work, that legislation will have to land by the end of June. So July is probably a very good time for an update.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, members, quite a lot of information there, lots of dates, lots of timings. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Right, yeah, sorry, I've already asked a couple of questions. No, I think that's it. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So unless there's anything more from EY or from our own officers, no, Darren's shaking his head. Thank you very much for that update, both of you. As chair, myself and Darren will look out for communication from EY at some point early mid-February, and hopefully we'll be able to come back to the next meeting and let members know that 2021 is in the past. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we move on to item 6, our internal audit quarterly report. And I'll hand over to our Chief Auditor, Paul Harrington, for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my standard quarterly report covering the period of September to December, but in all reality, it's probably closer to the end of November than it is to December, so things would have moved on. So as always, the detail is in Appendix 1, page 23. I'm going to work on the basis that the report has been read, but you will see that each audit has a title, has a brief sort of summary of the high-level findings of that audit, and then we give each audit an assurance opinion. Now, those assurance opinions are described on page 24 with an explanation as to how we arrive at that opinion. So we have positive opinions, which are substantial and reasonable, and negative opinions, which are limited and no assurance at all. Each audit is supported by recommendations, which are RAG stated, red, amber, green. If it's red, it's a priority 1. It means that the controls are not in place or risks aren't being managed, and they're significant recommendations. Likewise, green are just advisory recommendations, and amber are somewhere in between. But we place our reliance on the assurance opinion, and everything we give a negative assurance opinion, at some point in time, we will go back and make sure that those recommendations have been implemented. So for this quarter, we've completed a total of 5 audits, 2 receiving a positive opinion and 3 receiving a negative opinion. In addition, 2 grants were certified to confirm they had met the conditions of the grant determination. So the reasonable assurance opinion reviews are commercial investments. That was focusing on the specifically on the Oracle lease agreements. We also gave reasonable assurance for iTrent payroll expenses, so that's looking at travel and assistance and overtime. The limited assurance reviews were Reading Foundation for Arts, continuing healthcare, and the no assurance is gifts, employee gifts, hospitalities and declarations of interest. We also do some consultancy work. So over the past, or Q3, we attended the Intend procurement project. We're involved in Office 365 realisation project, information governance. We attended the Finance Systems Board, and we did a piece of work for my colleague, Mr. Graham, on the ICANN billing system. On page 32, that lays out the plan. It shows you those audits we've completed and those we've still got to do in 23-24. We are behind in the plan. I'm already starting to defer some of those audits to 24-25. So they will get done, but it's just they're not done to the original timescale planned. And then on page 34-35, that breaks down the work of the investigations team and the work they've done from April to December 23. And I've also, just to provide some context, I've highlighted the number of referrals that the investigations team investigates. So to date, at the end of Q3, they'd had 144 referrals. There's currently 37 ongoing investigations. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Yeo.
Thanks, Chair. Hang on a minute, this is a bit far away. I read the report. Thanks very much. It's the question over officer gifts, and I just thought the fact that it's been picked up and that you've recommended that basically there's a generic electronic process across the authority rather than it being anything separate in different services or whatever. I mean, that makes sense, and as long as that's what's implemented, then I think that will be assured next time rather than a no assurance. So, but I just thought it'd be worth noting it, because I mean, I understand the pressure officers are under, but at the same time, it's the sort of thing that it could get missed.
No, I agree. It's a basic governance issue. So the iTrent is going to be used to capture declarations of interest, we believe. And in terms of a more, we call it electronic, but like more of a workflow, that's being looked at. But at the moment, it's a combination of spreadsheets, Word documents, etc. But we would like a proper process for recording any gifts, hospitalities, etc.
Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting that. I've got Councillor Dennis and then Councillor Robinson.
Hi, Paul. Just on the sort of hospitality, you know, and the benefits and that on that item, I just was wondering whether part of a statutory sort of training package, would that be something that could be included so that, you know, regularly staff have to, you know, do the training package, and included in that would be things like cyber security, you know, and this sort of stuff, just to keep people on their toes, you know, in respect of those basic terms and conditions.
That's a really good point. So as one of the appendices, you will see the actual full detailed audit report listing the recommendations and the management responses, and they are very, very thorough. But I think as well as the training and the publicity and the importance of reminding staff that they've got a duty under the Staff Code of Conduct to report any declarations of interest, to report any gifts and hospitalities offered. That's important. That's an important reminder. So you're absolutely right in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise 2 points, and one's very carefully being covered by Councillor Dennis there. First on paragraph 2.2. 2.2.2, iTrent is a cloud-based integrated payroll and HR system. It has 2 access points, one for employees and one for managers. Is that factually correct? I mean, certainly from a manager perspective, one would need to go in and approve expenses, but is there not also access provided to the HR payroll team in terms of providing a final authority? That's the first one. Secondly, on the employee gifts, hospitality and declaration, you know, one thing stuck out like a sore thumb to me, which in 2.4.5, furthermore, it was not possible to establish which employees had received a copy of the employee code of conduct, you know, which is staggering, I suppose, in compliance related terms. As Councillor Dennis has already mentioned, you know, there is the possibility of providing an online module which employees would have to go to every so often just to ensure that they were up to date with all of the requirements. But you know, an employee code of conduct can also be provided in an online training module, and obviously those that pass it prove that compliance, and therefore, you know, it is a record of fact that they have, you know, fully understood and accepted the code of conduct. Also, as regards the code of conduct, are we looking in this respect at purely employees? Are we also looking at third parties that work with the council? Because, you know, there is a clear risk, you know, of gifts and hospitality being given to partners that we work with, which could, you know, cause concern over potential reputation. And likewise with councillors, given, you know, what we do, you know, for the council. So is it purely just employees, or is it a larger group that we are looking at in respect of this? Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. There was quite a few questions there, in fact, wasn't there, when you said there was only going to be a couple? Snuck quite a lot in. So there's a question of access to the system and the code of conduct, and whether third parties and councillors also need to be reviewed. Maybe I can pass that back to Paul.
I'll do my best, but I'm not technically adverse on the ins and outs of iTrent. But yes, there's 2 access points. There's one for staff. So each employee will be able to access iTrent so they can book annual leave, submit travel and assistance claims, etc., etc. And then there's a portal which managers will access to authorise those claims, to authorise those annual leave, and they can monitor the sickness stats of their team members, etc. So there are 2 portals. Yes, payroll, HR will have access as well. One of the issues we did raise is in terms of mileage claims being over 90 days. So iTrent will have a shut off. So after 90 days, if you haven't submitted your mileage claim, it won't accept it. Now that shut off, it can then be overridden by HR or payroll if the manager requests that's done. I hope that answers your question. In terms of the code of conduct, the issue we had was trying to establish who's actually seen and read the code of conduct, and we can't establish that. So the code of conduct goes out to all new employees, and there will be a letter, and on that letter it will say CC code of conduct. Sometimes that letter doesn't say CC code of conduct. Does that mean they haven't had a copy? We don't know. So I can't run a report from iTrent that says, right, all these employees, whether new or existing, have seen or read the council's code of conduct. In terms of the solutions to that, that's in the manager's response, and that's really something for the assistant director for human resources to respond to.
Are you happy, councillor? Yeah. We didn't maybe address whether there is any requirement to look at third parties as well. This was an audit only, an investigation only of employees.
Yes,
so it didn't include members.
It didn't include members. It was employees, but it did include agency staff. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. It's probably only 2. The high level Oracle, the summary of the Oracle report, I've got paragraph 2.1.7 noted that falling asset values were not present within risk registers. So that wasn't a risk that we were tracking along the way. Do you know if that is now a risk that's being tracked? So is that now present in the relevant risk register? Otherwise, I might even be really mean and throw that question over to Vicky, who's sitting behind you.
I don't know. Obviously, it was a recommendation following the audit, but whether it's actually been added to the directorate risk register or service risk register, I don't know.
Okay, if I address the audit recommendations tracker, will I don't think I'll see that one because Oracle was reasonable, so we're not going to be tracking this. Okay, so if I wanted to see how that recommendation was being implemented, because I happen to be interested, I won't see it on the tracker. What's the sort of valid process for me to go about seeing how that's been implemented? Is there one where this committee can get assurance outside of the recommendations tracker?
Yeah, of course you can. You can ask the assistant director for that area for their response to that recommendation and confirmation whether it's been implemented. You're the chair of the audit committee, so yes, of course you can.
Brilliant. I'll just do that as chair. I'll let members know if they're interested and I'll pass that on. Perfect. My second question, the Reading Foundation for Art, which, like me, was established in 1974 and like me could benefit from updating, it said. That resulted in 9 recommendations, and I couldn't see them on the audit tracker, but I think they should be there because it was one that we will be tracking. Did they just not go on in time because this audit was sort of one of the later ones, and will we see it next time round? Might even be a question for Darren or whoever is. Can you ask that? Thank you.
Yeah, so sometimes it very much depends on timing.
It's just timing.
So if we finalise the audit in time to be reported here, in an ideal world, yes, those recommendations, they'll be on the tracker now, but they might not necessarily be in that report, but they will be on the tracker.
Perfect. So we'll see that come through next time. And my last one, promise, is my last question. You mentioned that you are now deferring some items to 24-25, and you, although you didn't sound happy, you didn't sound too concerned. Are you concerned? Is that a resource issue that worries you, and should this committee be concerned seeing a number of items deferred from the plan into next year?
It could become a concern if I don't think I've done enough to give an annual assurance opinion at the end of the year. Then there will be a concern if I can't give an informed annual opinion on the council's controlled environment. The reasons why they've been deferred have been a combination of things. They've been additional work, unplanned work, which has come in, so we've had to shift resources to other areas, and staff sickness. But yeah, so I've got to find that balance. So we've still got a couple of months of this financial year. My annual report will be ready in July. I'm hoping that those audits will be done by that time. So hopefully I will have done significant work, but it's not to say they're not going to be done, but yeah, they're just not done as quickly as I would have hoped.
Okay, thank you very much. We've asked a few questions. Members, do you have any thoughts or questions? Otherwise, are we happy? We've considered the report, and I thank Internal Audit for all their work bringing these detailed reports to us. Yeah, nods all round. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll close item 6. Item 7 is the audit tracker, already trailed by me in that previous one. This is the implementation of the audit recommendations, and I think am I going to look to Darren in a second for a brief introduction. We've also got, very welcome, the Director of Housing, Zelda, who will be able to give us a verbal update on the housing repairs items and cover off any questions we might have. Thank you very much for coming in. I think we go for a general introduction first, if we might do, and then members, if we've got any questions or comments not relating to the housing items, let's do those first and get them out of the way, and then we can focus in and invite Zelda to speak. So if I go to Darren for an introduction of the audit tracker as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you said, this is the latest report tracking progress against the implementation of recommendations against limited and no assurance audit reports. There are 60 recommendations on the tracker, and 38 of these are reported as being complete. Now, what this means is that allows us to focus on the 22 that are remaining. The age profile of the remaining 22 recs are shown in 3.7 in the report. We're now considering those 22 recs monthly at CMT, and following a conversation that we had last month, I've requested target implementation dates for all of the outstanding audit recommendations. And I've now received proposals for new target implementation dates, given the fact that people didn't hit the original dates. We didn't include those revised implementation dates in the report to you tonight because I haven't yet agreed that I'm comfortable with those revised dates. But if I do agree them, then we may well include them on future reports to the committee, because I think tracking against a date that might have been 2 years ago is of limited benefit to the committee now. What we need to do is to track against the date that we now think is realistic to implement the recommendations. So I'm leading that on behalf of CMT, but I just want to reassure you that it's been discussed every month at CMT, and we had a helpful conversation this morning about the latest version of the tracker. So yeah, just wanted to give you that reassurance. So that was it really for my headlines in terms of these, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions about the details on the tracker itself.
Thank you very much. And members, do we have any questions on the tracker itself, the information we're being provided with? I think I would say, compared to previous trackers we've had reported to us, I think we're seeing significant good progress. If we simply look at the RAG ratings, we've seen a lot of green, and we used to see quite a lot of red. So even for the simple stare at the colours, it's looking good. It's good that it has focus, and we now have a much reduced report, so it's not just us, but CMT can now focus in on significant issues, internal audit raised. I'm not seeing any questions, so thank you to Darren. And now I can invite Zelda to say a few words, because our, if I get this right, it wasn't the last meeting, July meeting received a limited assurance report on housing repairs. There was a list of stuff There were over 8,000 open jobs. Over half of those were overdue. There were lots of recommendations raised, lots of good progress. I think if we've read through the tracker, we'll already see some good progress. So over to Zelda. I guess as a committee, we're interested in how the situation came about, what's been done to address it, and what is still left to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's still quite a lot to do. Just to give you some context, following a restructure in 2019, the Housing Repair Service moved from housing into environmental and commercial services. But then shortly after that, the pandemic hit and the service moved to just doing essential repair jobs. So jobs that people came across in their properties weren't reported at that time. So we encouraged them to wait until after the pandemic. The impact of COVID and then Brexit and the impact on the construction industry generally meant that there were some significant capacity issues that the service started to feel. And as we got to the end of COVID, we had that surge in the number of jobs being reported because of the sort of pent up demand. The head of repairs went on long-term sick, so the service was out without any leadership for a little while. An interim was appointed, and when they came in, it was a situation where they were just trying to firefight the issues rather than having the ability to sort of plan to deal with the capacity issues and all of the sort of the systems, the processes and the procedures. So they were in firefighting mode, and I think that was at the point when the audit was undertaken. The interim subsequently moved on. The AD for the service also moved on and got a new role somewhere else. So the service was brought back into housing on an interim basis just to give it some leadership and a bit of stability to get underneath some of the recommendations from the audit. So I just want to provide assurances that the service is working really hard on trying to deal with all of the issues and working through the recommendations. There's been a significant focus on capacity building, so the recruitment to the service, and we're working with our HR colleagues. We've filled a significant number of the management posts. We've got a new head of repairs and an assistant head of repairs. And a number of the trade operative posts are filled now, some permanent, some with agency, but there are still capacity issues to address. We've also had a focus on procurement, so working with our procurement team, we've extended the reactive repairs and voice contract. So we do in-house work, but we also have this contract to subcontract where we don't have the capacity in-house. The current provider had capacity issues as well. Their workforce, a lot of their workforce were Eastern Europeans, and they lost them during COVID, which meant that they had difficulties sort of backfilling some of those posts. But they do provide some extra capacity. We've extended the contract for 8 months, and we're working with the procurement team to carry out market engagement events to bring new contractors on board, and also to regularise where we've got contractors that we're working with that are not in contract at the current time. So working through all the things that we need to do to sort those issues out. We've also got we commissioned an external review, so we've got some external consultants who've come in to carry out a sort of a root and branch review of the service. They're due to report this week with recommendations that we will then take forward in a service improvement plan, which the head of repairs will work through. And just to say, I think just again to provide assurances, a lot of the issues are around systems, processes, capacity, but the service is working really hard in terms of our ability to get out to tenants and get the job done. And we've just had the tenant satisfaction results come in, so that's independently done on an annual basis. And actually satisfaction with the overall repair service over the last 12 months has moved from 76% to 80%. So, so although there are all of these issues, I think the work that's been done in the service to try to protect the tenants from those issues has been quite significant. And just to address the issue around the backlog, so as I said, it's kind of built up over a period of time, starting with COVID. and we've had extra resourcing to go through those jobs. So the majority of those jobs are not live jobs. So they are duplicate jobs. So they've been raised and then they've been raised again. But we have to go through every single job just in case there's anything that's outstanding. So the number of the backlog has reduced to about 1,700 jobs. We have got about 4,000 jobs in progress at the current time, but there's been a significant reduction in terms of just trying to get through that backlog and try to understand what we've got there. Thank you, Chair. I don't know, I think Darren wanted to say something about finances.
Oh, okay, over to Darren.
Yeah, because so Zelda's covered a lot of what was in the original audit report, but there is also the report also identified some significant financial control weaknesses in the service as well, ranging from things like the way that we do the charges, the way that we clarity about the costs and reconciliations and things like that, which they haven't been implemented yet. So we are overdue against the dates that were in the original tracker. So when I said earlier that I've received requests for a new target date, this is one of the areas where I've received a request for a new target date for implementation. Haven't yet approved it, but will do in due course, or will consider it in due course. Now, it's important to remember that sometimes these dates aren't hit because we're reliant on new systems being implemented, and delays on implementation of those systems can impact. So this is really about the transfer of financial information between the housing system and the council's corporate finance system. And as you know, the council's corporate finance system was changed in December, and we're currently working through an implementation of the NEC housing system, which is due at the end of April. Having said all that, though, some of the issues in the original audit reports aren't really system issues, they're about process issues. And as part of considering that revised implementation plan for each of the recommendations, I'm going to be doing some work with my team on understanding exactly how we use the functionality of the new systems that we're implementing to address the issues that were in the original audit report. So I'm happy to provide an update to you on those issues as part of the audit tracker report next time, but we haven't got it today.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Gittings.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Elder, for coming along and obviously updating us on what's going on. I mean, as councillors, certainly as Labour councillors, we're incredibly proud that our service is in-house. We kept our council housing stock when we had the opportunity several years ago not to do that. We made the political decision to do that. And I think, you know, councillors and fellow councillors and I visited a site in our ward a week or so back, which is under the auspices, I won't mention them, name them, of a housing association, and the backlog of repairs there and the lack of attention to it was absolutely shocking. So I think we can rest assured that in comparison, our council repairs are certainly a lot better than that. Although it appears obviously 1 in 5 of people aren't satisfied, you know, with the repair, and that's good that we're showing improvement. I think as ward councillors, we do get a lot of complaints over this. Now, you've given a really good explanation as to why that's happened, and I'm going to say Brexit, which I think my views on that are unprintable, but that is a major. Well, it's a major factor, isn't it? Because of we've got labour shortages, people who, you know, loyal servants of the council have perhaps gone home, have left, and the whole of the construction industry is suffering from this. So that's a good reason. But I suppose what I wanted to say was a reassurance that it's the customer service side of this. I think that the interaction with tenants and, you know, where people have got into a property, and we've had. I've seen a new example where, you know, work's been done on one part of but an obvious repair has just been completely sort of ignored, and this really, you know, is you know, that raising when you've got a problem. So are you working on that? I mean, the system stuff, you know, maybe we can perhaps come back, you know, 6 months to report whether that's we've got there. I mean, that's for others to decide, you know, in terms of tracking, but it's the training and the customer service and the communication, I think, that to my mind is the sort of nub of this. If you stretch your line, just kind of want a reassurance that we're working on that. You know, it's difficult, but to try and address those.
Yeah, so Stuart Andrews, who's the new head of repairs, is very focused. So in terms of the toolbox talks that are done with the trade operatives, in terms of when their trades are going into the home, that they're picking up on more than just what the job that they went there to do is. So there's a lot of work going on in relation to that. There's also work going on between the service and the call centre and how we can get a better diagnosis of jobs when those jobs come through, and that people are kept informed when a tradesman might go out to a property, they may have to then get a part, and then we don't go back and tell people how long that's going to be. So actually improving that communication. So there is a very strong focus on that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's reassuring, and it's you know, it's going to be a work in progress, isn't it? You can't.
Yeah. It is a work in progress, and it's also something that has to, you know, that we have to say it again and again and again, you know. So trades come and go, and some of our trades have been quite tricky, and so just kind of you know, embedding those messages. We can't. It's not just a one stop. You know, no. We'll do it once, and we have to keep that message going.
And is the recording mechanism a problem as well? Because obviously, you know, Darren has mentioned that. So obviously, if you've got a good record of what's happening and tracking it, yeah, well, then you've got a problem with communication internally, haven't you? So
yeah, so there are different things, but one of the areas that Stuart's really focused on is when a repair is raised and an operative goes out to the job, if that appears again. So where a job isn't done and it's not completed effectively, then that same trade operative will go back out and do the job, so that we don't have this situation where they do half a job and then we send somebody else out to do the job again, so that they recognise that it's not acceptable for them to not do a good job.
Perfect. Thank you. Good questions, Councillor Gittins. Thank you for raising that. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question regarding, it's page 98, and I think Darren mentioned this about the current housing system not being capable of an automatic interface. I have an issue with the wording that follows, saying it is hoped that the new housing NEC system will be able to do this in the phase 2 implementation. Hoped is not something that I have that much faith in. I would like it. Is there definite proof from the vendor, from NEC, that they can provide this functionality and it will be available in the phase 2 of the implementation? Hoping is not something that I like to see in terms of planning, for want of a better description. Thank you.
Not sure who would be best to respond to that one.
I can pick it up. So I've confirmed that. Yes, it can do it. What we need to do is to build an interface between E5 and the NEC system, and it will do that. The NEC implementation has taken a long time. There's issues with the product, so we're working hard with NEC to try and get this over the line. So the finance part of the system will come in phase 2. So after we've implemented the, hopefully go live in April 2024, then that will follow through.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Zelda, for coming along today. Just wanted to ask about the, you say that there's 1,700 outstanding repairs. I mean, do we sort of grade those repairs? So, you know, they're sort of very minor that could just be knocked off. And do we kind of have a team that will just concentrate on the low hanging fruit and get those out of the way to, you know, sort of, you know, and have more experienced guys on the more trickier repairs or the longer repairs?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've got some technical administration officers, so they go in and then they triage the job. So looking at the one, so if it came in as an urgent or an emergency, I mean, shouldn't be sitting there if it's an urgent or emergency, because somebody would have come back to us. So just trying to get rid of those jobs as we work through. And then if there are things that are more tricky, then So the assistant housing repairs manager is working through those himself.
Perfect, thank you. I don't see anyone else raising. I just had a quick question. I think I understood from your introduction that housing repairs sat within housing, moved out, and is now back within housing. And it sounds like there's a huge amount of hard work going in. Thank you. Will it stay in housing now, or is that a temporary, or is that a permanent location for it?
So we haven't made, a final decision hasn't been made on that as yet.
Thank you very much. Members, we do see 9 of the recommendations on our tracker. I think 5 are already green. I think 4 are still amber. So there is good progress, which I think is worth noting. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more questions or thoughts. So our thanks very much to Darren for introducing the tracker and Zelda for coming in and talking to us this evening. Thank you. Members, we are asked to consider and note the report. Is everyone happy? Noted. Thank you. We'll have a tiny little pause to let anyone leave the room who wants to leave, not you, members. Only officers are allowed to leave. And then in a second, we're going to go on to the Strategic Risk Register, which is our new and improved version. I said that with an exclamation mark at the end. I don't know if you could hear that. New and improved Strategic Risk Register with an introduction from Vicky this evening, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hand over.
Good evening. Unfortunately, Robin can't be here this evening. He does send his apologies, so I'm going to present to you this evening. Hopefully, you've had a chance to read the Strategic Risk Register and the Risk Management Report, but I'm just going to quickly do an update and run through the documents. So the Strategic Risk Register in front of you is for Q3 up to the end of December for all the actions that have been completed, and the looking forward up to the end of March in terms of the risk ratings towards the council. And this report was approved at CMT on the 19th of December. As we mentioned before, last quarter, risk registers now operate on a live basis, with the risk card owners required to keep them up to date at all times, rather than waiting till the end of the quarter. And this is for both the Directorate and the Strategic Risk Registers. Within the Strategic Risk Register, there remains the same 11 risks as were present in the last quarter. So there's been no escalations from the Directorate Risk Registers and no de-escalations from the Strategic Risk Registers downwards. As can be seen, there are 5 red risks, and these are the same 5 red risks as last quarter. So they are risk of loss from cyber, lack of local special educational needs, disability placement provision to meet current and future levels of demand, failure to safeguard vulnerable adults and children, failure to deliver the carbon commitments, and unable to deliver the balanced budget. To ensure continual monitoring of these 5 strategic red risks, they are now on the monthly corporate management performance monitoring reports, and at CMT they are monitoring the actual actions that are within those risk cards, and this monitoring is in addition to the quarterly reporting that we do to CMT and obviously through to yourselves on that quarterly basis. What I'd like to highlight to you is that there's qualitative data now being recorded in that background context box, and you'll also see that for this quarter there's a lot of hard work being put in, and that background box information is now a lot more detailed to provide the context of why we believe these are the red risks, or all the risks across the council. You will also see that there is a change to quite a lot of the specific actions that are highlighted, and that's because we've been reviewing and working with the relevant risk card owners to ensure that the actions highlighted are clear, concise, and there is a bit of an update if it's only part way in progress, rather than just leaving it straight in progress. We're asking people to put in, as time passes, updates to those actions. So a lot of work has gone in to that, to the risk cards. In terms of changes to risk ratings, there has only been one of them as changed risk rating, and that is the tackling inequalities or failure to tackle inequalities strategy. And you'll see that that has actually reduced in level of risk, and this is due to the monitoring report going to policy committee this month, which it might have already gone, and the fact that the actions that have been highlighted within that plan have been flagged as green, so there's assurances, and that has reduced the risk rating. Any questions?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Councillor McGoldrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, and it's really it's great to have the report's really accessible. It's really clear, and it's really easy to sort of take the information in. Which, you know, thank you to officers for that. I just had a really specific question on arguably what's not in the report, which was I appreciate that what you're saying about the sort of it escalates up from the directorate. But I just noticed there's nothing on, given the sort of significant overspend we've had on emergency accommodation, the pressures that we know are currently on, you know, increased homelessness, people sort of facing particularly no fault evictions quite a lot. And I appreciate there is a line in the report around, you know, the inability to pass a balanced budget because of cost of living pressures, but I'm not sure that takes in this quite specific and what, you know, from our experience at surgery and sort of, you know, speaking to residents on the door, it actually, you know, that homelessness crisis does feel like it's something that is bubbling up. And I just wondered, you know, has it just not been escalated up from the directorate, and why it's not in the strategic risk report? I'm just curious.
So I can report that the homeless aspect is covered within a directorate risk register. In terms of finances, can I pass over to Darren if you want to see what it's?
Yeah, so the financial implications are part of the inability to set a budget. So that does feed up into the strategic risk register. But it's only part of the wider budget setting issues. I accept that it's not identified as a separate item in the risk register.
Oh, please come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that the budgetary pressures an aspect of it, but obviously homelessness has, you know, broader implications across the borough, implications for our residents and, you know, other directorates as well. So I was just wondering if there is any move or logic to having it marked in the strategic risk register going forward.
I can take that back and yeah.
So I think in the past, although only once, I've requested to see the directorate level risk registers on something that was of interest. So I think you could request to see the information that's currently stored at that lower level, the directorate level. And that might give you, or all of us, if we're all interested, that might give us all either the confidence to say, yes, that is the right place for it. We don't think it's strategic. Or you might think, no, I was absolutely right. I think this is a strategic level risk, and we can ask for that as a committee to be considered. So maybe that's something we could ask for through Vicky, a request to see that directorate level risk register for that issue, briefed to members. Yes, nodded. Yeah, maybe we could make that request, send that through to us, and that will give us the information to consider. I've got a few nods. Yes, nods everywhere. I think if I'm right, we can't constantly request directorate level risk registers because they're being updated all the time. Not that we can't see them or anything, not that that's not valid information for us, but as they're a live living document, we can't constantly see the latest updates. But obviously, if there's one of interest, then it's worth us seeing. Does that sound okay? Cool. There is a lot of information in these, but I agree it is well presented to us. Just as a quick note, we see cyber on this list, and we have an agenda item at the end, which we're going to hold in confidential session. Does anyone have anything else? Any thoughts or comments on these? Councillor Robinson's finger is twitching, yes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for these reports, very well put together. Obviously, we'll be discussing cyber later, yep. But I noted from here about, you know, reference to preparedness for cyber attack to be assessed as part of the 2023-24 business continuity plan refresh. Disaster recovery as well is something that I think was missing from this. Do we have a set of plans with the vendors that the council uses in terms of if something is hit within the cloud, how do we get back to a state of, good working after such an attack? Is there a whole set of, good SLAs, but also are we working actively with the vendor community in terms of ensuring that we do not fall foul of, such attacks in future? Thank you.
So these are a very valid question. I don't know whether officers would like to take it in item 12 or now. I'm going to look over.
I'm going to pass over to Martin.
So I shall respond on that here, but if we want to go into further detail, it might be more appropriate to leave to item 12 because it would be inappropriate to go into detail of individual services here. The first thing to emphasise is that as part of the security measures that we've put in place since the establishment of the new operating model that we put in place back in 2001. We've introduced a set of strong requirements that we apply to every new software procurement, and business continuity and disaster recovery are an element of those requirements. And so we look very closely at the adequacy of suppliers arrangements. All of that said, it is always going to be a risk for any organisation that if a supplier is hit with an attack, that there will be a period of outage. And experience in other local authorities who suffered attack is that can be a prolonged period. The reason for the statement that is made about assessing and making sure that we have adequate control in place is to ensure that our business continuity and disaster recovery plans in the business as well as in technology are absolutely up to meeting the reality of that risk. And part of that plan, as I think is documented in the risk register, is then once we've conducted that review, going through a rehearsal of those business continuity and disaster recovery arrangements to make sure that our preparedness is in line with modern understanding of the threat based on the experiences that other organisations have faced.
Thank you. Happy. Yeah, I mean, obviously do raise anything further in our detailed confidential session at the end of the meeting. Members, does anyone else have anything? No, shaking heads. Thank you very much then. In that case, are we happy to agree the recommended action on item 8? Nods all round. Thank you very much. And we will move something we now know all about, the Treasury Management Review, because I can't hold up the training material to the screen because we're not on screen, but we have it in front of us. Some of us have just done our training session for which we thank officers. Where's Stuart? There he is. So we all understand this very easily now. Is it Stuart to introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the Council's Treasury Management activities for the quarter ended 30th of September 2023. I'll just take you through some of the key highlights. The Bank of England raised interest rates in August up to 5.25%, where they've remained to date. The forecast interest rates are set out in Table 1 of the report and are projected to begin to gradually reduce from midway through the next financial year. The Council is forecasting a positive variance of £307,000 on investment income, and that's mainly due to interest rates rising above levels that were assumed when the budget was set in February. There's also a positive variance of £1.879 million on interest payable, and that's primarily due to improved reprogramming of the capital programme. So therefore we've needed to borrow less. Those variances were reported to Policy Committee as part of the Q2 Performance and Monitoring Report in December. The Council remains significantly under borrowed against its capital financing requirement and is continuing to follow its approved borrowing strategy of deferring any potential long-term borrowing whilst interest rates remain at current levels and is utilising short or temporary borrowing as required. I mentioned when I presented the Q1 report in September that during September the council repaid 2 further lender option borrower option loans, so those are also known as LOBOs, totalling £10 million. This is now formally set out in paragraph 7.3 of this Q2 report. LOBO loans, essentially, they allow the lender an option to periodically review and propose a revised interest rate on the loan. If that option is exercised, the borrower therefore has an option to either accept the revised rate or to repay the loan. In respect of these 2 loans, the lender took up their option in September to propose an increase on those rates. The rates were 4.18% and they proposed an increase to 6%. So the council took up its option to repay the principal amounts rather than being locked into those proposed higher interest rates. So the council now therefore only has 1 LOBO loan left on its borrowing portfolio, which is set out in Appendix 2. The interest rate for that loan is 4.19%, and we will know in the next week whether that lender is going to take up their option to propose a revised rate. The council continues to operate within all of its Treasury indicators and none were breached during the period. Thank you and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, some of us did ask quite a lot of questions in the training session, which was really useful. Do we have any questions on this report specifically? No, I've only got one, which is if, because I'm coming slowly to understanding things, if the lender increases the percentage on the final LOBO of 5 million, is the council in a position to pay that 5 million off in a short time frame and thus clear that one as well?
If they propose to increase it, we probably would look to repay it. It might require us to take some short or temporary borrowing just to get us over some pinch points during the year, but if they propose to increase it, we would definitely look to repay it, given the interest rate forecasts are projected to come down later in the year.
Thank you very much. Members, no one's indicating, so thank you very much. Thank you for the training and thank you for the report. I think I understood we'll receive that report each quarter now, based on SIPFA recommendation. So we'll see that come through. Thank you. We're happy to note the report. Nods all round, little waves, thumbs up. We move to item 10, the new finance system, which is a progress update from Darren, I think. And I think congratulations are in order, as we have a report on successful implementation.
We certainly do. So yes, I'm very, very happy to say that since the last meeting of the committee that we've gone live with a new finance system. So we switched off Oracle Fusion at the end of November and we went live with Advanced E5 in early December. It's been a successful implementation since go live. We've had on this report over 400 users that access the system, raising purchase orders, raising invoices. We were accounting for that income and expenditure properly within the general ledger. It's all been reconciled. It's all working. There are snagging issues, as always with a new system implementation. They come from a variety of sources. So some of this is nothing to do with E5, but as part of E5 implementation, we changed the system's, the council's scheme of delegation for approval limits for purchase orders. Despite doing that through CMT more than a year before we went live and communicating regularly to SLG and numerous people, it seemed to come as a complete surprise to some people the day after we went live. That wasn't specifically a system issue, but it became a system issue because we then had to address a load of queries. In terms of the technical issues that we are experiencing, I mean, the good news is we're paying people, we're paying providers. There was a bit of noise on social media before Christmas suggesting we weren't. We are. We've had no issues with paying people. It was only 1 or 2 things, but trust me, I was sensitive to these things in the run up to Christmas. So we are paying people. We've had some issues with Remittance advices are being generated from the system, but there was some issue that meant that they weren't actually getting to providers to tell them what the payments were for. That's resolved, but we did have a period of time when they weren't receiving it, so we were getting a bit of noise from providers about that. And there's still some tweaks we need to do within the council's reporting arrangements through collaborative planning, but I've got to say, if you'd have given me this as an option 6 months ago, I'd have bit your hand off for it, because everything's been successfully implemented. I said we're paying people, we're receiving income, and we're properly accounting for things in the general ledger, and those were my 3 fundamental things that we had to get right. So now that we've gone live, we will be scaling back the reliance on the consultants who we brought in to work with us on that. And by the way, those consultants have done an outstanding job on the system, and I've thanked them personally for all their efforts in getting us to this point. But we need to wean my team's reliance off those consultants now, and for it to become business as usual, and for us to take responsibility for running the system ourselves. And that is happening, but there's just a bit of a process to go through over the coming weeks as we sort of reduce the reliance on those consultants. We have got a list of things that we would like to do in the future in terms of improvements. I haven't yet got those properly costed or worked out how we resource it, so I won't share those with the committee until I've got more detail than I can actually sign up to, but there are further developments that we would like to do. But yeah, the really good news is we've successfully gone live with a new system, and I was talking about this with Audit Committee on my first ever meeting in Reading nearly 3 years ago. So I'm incredibly chuffed that we've finally gone live. So happy to take any questions, obviously.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got an indication from Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is just a comment rather than a question. I'd just like to thank you and the team, really. Obviously, it's a hell of a journey. I understand these sort of things. I've come from a tech background, and I've done commissioning work over 2 or 3 years on systems and software. So I understand, the amount of work that goes into that kind of thing. And it's good now that we have a, in inverted commas, successful implementation. Now we just need a successful handover. Thank you.
Thank you. And because I said at the start of the meeting tonight that Microsoft couldn't present, I'm convinced that's at least partly due to the fact that he was working 24/7 for several weeks in the run up to implementation. And as we know, as soon as that happens, your body just sort of says, right, I need to shut down for a couple of weeks now. And I do think there's a bit of that within the team. So I can't claim any credit for this myself. It was the rest of the team who did the work, but I'll pass on your thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please do minute our thanks to the team. I don't think do we need the inverted commas around successful? I think we'll just say successful. I think it needs to bed in now, just as any system would. And I think as we go forward, this wasn't a new system for the sake of it, was it? This is going to deliver improvements, some of which have been sort of tracked against audit recommendations for years. Yeah. And those are now going to turn green and disappear, which is
well, that's the plan.
That's the plan.
Yes,
that's the hope.
And I mean, the sort of things that it does give is budget holders didn't previously have direct access to their own financial information on Oracle. It's there now on E5. We're going to roll some of that out over the coming weeks and months, but that's the sort of thing where previously, if a budget holder wanted to go in and access their own information, they couldn't. Well, they can on E5. So.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, are we happy to note the report with our thanks? Very happy. Perfect. We can move on to item 11, the Information Governance Quarterly Update, with an introduction from Mike Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good evening, members. I'm just presenting the report this evening to update you on some of the matters which we've talked about before in relation to information governance. And I just want to draw your attention to some of the matters which are listed in the report. First of all, in relation to the backlog data, you've received updates on the progression of us identifying and then purchasing and then implementing a new system in order to help us with this. And that is underway, which is very good news. I just thought it would be also helpful for me to update you in relation to the table which you get showing the backlog. That can be at times a little meaningless, I suppose, without the context, and perhaps next time the report will do a full progression and tracking of how the backlogs come down. But I did a quick calculation in preparation for the committee just to look at some of those numbers. And this time last year we were at 70 backlog cases, and now we're at 47 backlog cases. So irrespective of the fact that we've got plans to produce or get the software in and help us deal with all of those SARS cases within a time scale, we have been gradually nibbling away at the backlog. And some of those cases can be very big and very demanding in terms of the redactions, especially when they're social care cases and they've got a lot of third-party data to redact. So that's hopeful, and I've tracked back through some of the other reports that I've given to you over the years, and yes, we had similarly high numbers, so we'll produce some kind of trend for that, and then we'll track through how that works in the implementation of the new system. The FOI data which you've got in the report is for Q2, and the way that the reporting cycle works means that we can't give you the Q3 data in time for this report going out, because the cases are still open from the end of December onwards. You'll see then that although we had reported previously about the hitch in the reporting, the number of cases which were going out in Q2 were still about 75%. And I've had a look at some of the data that is around for Q3, and it still seems to be around the same kind of 76%. Within that, there are some good news stories that we are seeing teams who are performing better and progressing more quickly. The December data was more encouraging, but we do get less requests during December, so it's difficult to place any reliance on that. But again, work is underway to make sure we're trying to improve that score across the board, and certainly the team are very happy with the way that the work is going on the casework system which is coming in, and I've got a lot of confidence in the forms and the reporting that they'll be working with in the future, and hope that they'll be able to make continued progress with services on that. I also wanted to raise with you, we've got a section in there on training. You'll note that the training stats for staff are lower than expected, and that is a matter which we have discussed at Information Governance Board previously in terms of how we can enforce that training, as the committee did indicate a couple of years ago that they view this as mandatory for staff, and that was reported back. We've had a further discussion and conversation at CMT about how we can get greater traction on those items for training which are mandatory and get the reporting coming through consistently. And I just wanted to give you a verbal update on that, corporate management team has agreed that, you know, IG and data protection and cybersecurity should remain as annual training and manual and delivered annually. And there are 6 other training items which are mandatory, which will be delivered every 2 years. So broken up, there'll be 5 mandatory a year. And we've also been asked to consider, and we haven't put this into place yet because we will have further conversations about how to put it into place in operations, but turning off the access to those members of staff who are persistently not doing their training, so as to make it absolutely clear that they will not be able to carry on with their work until they've done it, and also to reinforce to managers about the need to take persistent offenders through disciplinary procedures is a performance issue as well. And we've also been asked to look at other options which we may have for automatically blocking people out of systems if they don't do training in time or they don't read particular policies in time. And that's something which we will be investigating in the next few months. So those are the matters which I just wanted to raise with you, aside from what's written in the report.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any thoughts or questions? It sounds, on the face of it, harsh, doesn't it, to block access to an employee, but if they've had multiple chances to do what is essential training, then something has to happen. And what that something is, I wouldn't choose to say, but something must. Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, on that training issue, I know that other companies, private companies, they have a different, obviously, because they got other incentives that they give to their members of staff, like bonuses and stuff like that. A dependency upon receiving that bonus would be that they complete all their mandatory training modules. If they don't complete them all, then they won't be eligible for any kind of enhanced bonus or maybe even the pay rise. So, you know, I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying that the council could do that, but in the private sector, that's what they do. Particularly like cybersecurity is very, very serious, and you know, you get chased up regularly if you haven't done your cybersecurity training.
Thank you. Maybe there's a carrot and stick approach. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Dennis has said. Obviously, in my day-to-day job, I come up against this sort of issue on an ongoing basis. And in many cases, with many organisations, it is a legal requirement that everybody takes a specific type of training. For instance, in law, you know, you've got anti-bribery and money laundering courses that everybody has to do. So, you know, at the end of the day, if people are told what the, you know, the repercussions of them not doing the training, then they only have themselves to blame at the end of the day. Just another quick point, and it's probably me just being stupid, but I'm not really a great one for acronyms. Can you explain what SLG means? Is it the Senior Leadership Group? It is. Okay, thank you.
You're happy with that? The three-letter acronym, okay. Sorry, Councillor Yeo.
Thanks, Chair. I think taking on board Councillor Dennis and Robinson's points, but having been a local government officer myself and have some idea of what happens if you're, particularly if you're in a particular specialist job, we on the, say, the planning or transport committees, you know, for instance, where there are pressures or that there are, it gets reported back to you that, you know, that we're recruiting staff in one area and that we're trying to, we've got an extra, you know, there are extra demands because the council may have been successful winning money for an, you know, expensive project that takes us off of smaller ones that are really important. The point I'm making is as long as we consider the extenuating circumstances that may be on specific departments, if you're going to start locking people out, you're going to cause problems, obviously, and I don't think that's being suggested in a more general way. It's only if people are really under, you know, they're not responding to this. But I think sometimes there is a reason why people don't, and although you can put punitive things in, there are seasonal aspects to the jobs within the council that may mean, for instance, that you wouldn't be demanding an accountant did some particularly thing during the year-end process or something. You know, you'd give them the leeway to say, you know, you've got an extra month or a couple of weeks after you've done what you need to do. I think as long as that's done, then I think I'd agree.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to respond?
I take note of that. There are lots of there are lots of different pros and cons to any approach. The trajectory we've had here in the Audit and Governance Committee and reporting this is it's on the risk register as read. We've got a special item about it at the end of the agenda about why cybersecurity is important. And fundamentally, when it comes to cybersecurity training, the council is paying you for an hour to watch some cartoons and take a quiz. That is not really a burden, and we can reasonably expect staff, if they're asked to do it, to do it. It's an excellent package. It is useful for everybody in their everyday life to protect them generally against, you know, bad actors in cyberspace. So it needs to be done, and we've invested a lot of time and effort trying to get this money. Sorry, spend a lot of money on getting the data to managers to say, this is your. We've got a live report on Power BI with every service broken down about who has and who hasn't done it. The information's there for managers. We've added it into their annual governance statement. That was reported here last year as a suggestion and an update to the departmental annual governance statements. We've communicated to managers, it's your responsibility. They've been given the information about the training. We've spread it out through communications about what needs to be done and when. And so at some point, when you've done all that, you've got to do something else. So this is the territory we're now in.
Thank you. I think members are happy to underline how important we think it is. And obviously the approach is up to the senior management team, but yeah, again, we underline how important it is. And as you noted, the numbers of training uptake are not as high as you would expect and as high as you would want. I feel like I'm obsessed with percentages actually, because the freedom of information requests, I check them every time now, and they're not rising as quickly as we might have wanted or expected. I went back to the corporate plan, the current one, which I probably voted against. Sounds like something I would do. Which has a target of 95% replied to within time frame for 23-24. But we're looking at numbers bouncing around between 70 and 80. And I'm not sure if we're hearing what takes us to 95. Is that fair?
That's fair.
What's next?
We started this journey, didn't we, when we were at 56? And that's we're now up to sort of knocking on the door of 80 regularly. What needs to happen is that we need to systematically, it feels to me, after being around a number of different loops on this, we systematically need to remove every excuse that there is that people keep coming forward with as to why those FOIs are not done in time. And there are a couple still lingering, such as when the FOI gets split and going off into various different departments and people don't have the visibility and managers don't have the oversight for themselves to be able to see where all these are and who's dealing with them. And much as we do send weekly reports to managers on spreadsheets to say this is what is outstanding, when they're getting those reports and it's overdue, we've lost it. And what we really need from the system is a report which comes out at, our internal SLA target is 10 days. You're supposed to do the response within 10 days so that we can get it out and chase it up and find out if there's a problem between 10 days and 20 days. And it's the reporting and the visibility of those things which are missing the internal SLA target at 10 days to then get progressed and tracked and pressured and chased so we can get them out at 20. And that's currently where we know we haven't got a great solution, because managers can't get in and see that for themselves. We haven't got automatic reporting. We've escalated and changed the system so that we've got some one-on-one input chasing people in terms of staff time. But again, that seems to be working of limited value. So it's a number of different things, as we've reported before, I think last summer, in terms of the jigsaw of how we can try and influence this, and we're working on a number of different things.
Thank you very much. So it sounds as though we need to move our focus to earlier in the process, because by the time we've recognised it's late, it's too late. So, okay, thank you. I don't know the FOI team, but they are always hitting 100%, aren't they? So I admit they're dedicated to just doing that, but.
Well, those are the ones that they pick for themselves that they can answer. That's why they do that.
Oh. I was going
That is to save other services answering routine inquiries. They pick out the routine inquiries and get them answered first.
Well, I was going to congratulate 100%, but just, yeah, well, I'll take it back. Well, okay, so there's still work to do, but it sounds as though we at least recognise there's that work to do, and we recognise some steps that we might be able to take as an organisation. Is there anything else in the report, members, that you'd like to pick out? Nope, not seeing any indications. Okay, are we happy to note the report then? Yes, Chair, thank you very much indeed. And we're going to move on now to our cyber update, which is item 12, and that will be held in a closed session. So I assume I'm supposed to read out the following motion. So I will. Pursuant to section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, members of the press and public be excluded during consideration of the following items on the agenda, as it is likely there would be disclosure of exempt information as defined in the relevant paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of that Act. So I'll ask Michael to stop the live broadcast now, and anyone, officers who are finished, may leave. And who do we have in the public gallery? Oh, for fun. Are we okay to leave microphones on, or do we turn those off as well? Okay, so